Thanks for joining us today for our child support presentation on what new non-custodial parents need to know. Let's start with some basic definitions so we're all talking about the same thing. The custodial parent is the parent who has custody of the child the majority of the time. The custodial parent receives child support payments from the non-custodial parent. We call them the CP and the NCP. The non-custodial parent pays the child support, usually to the custodial parent, but sometimes the payment goes to DSS, the Department of Social Services. That depends on whether or not the children in the case are receiving benefits, such as cash assistance, Medicaid, or supplemental nutrition benefits. When a child or the children on the case are receiving benefits, then the NCP's payment goes to the Department of Social Services, although there is a pass-through to the custodial parent. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Current support is the amount that the NCP is required to pay on a regular basis, and that is outlined in the order of support that is issued in family court by a judge who is called the support magistrate. There are different parts of family court, but child support is dealt with separately by the support magistrate. Other issues such as custody of the child and visitation arrangements are handled by other parts of family court. When current support doesn't get paid, that's when we end up with arrears. And arrears are child support debt, that's child support that has not been paid and ends up being debt owed by the NCP. And it can be owed either to the custodial parent or the Department of Social Services, or both. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, OCSS's mission statement is that we put children first and we help both parents support their children. And if you think about it, both parents should support a child. However the child came into the world, whether it was in marriage or in a chance encounter, the two people who brought a child into the world should both share in the responsibilities to support the children. And we do that by by locating NCPs and establishing parentage. Parentage, aka paternity, must be established before a child support order can be created. Once we've located the non-custodial, and we have to know where the non-custodial parent is because we have to notify the non-custodial parent that there is a petition for child support that's been filed by the custodial parent. We locate the NCP, we establish parentage, and then go to court to establish the child support order. We then monitor and enforce those orders, and we help NCPs find employment and hopefully help them avoid and manage debt so that that does not become a problem. Next slide. Okay, we have a long relationship with our clients. If a child support case starts when a child is 3, in New York State, the age of emancipation is 21. So that means we are going to have, in all likelihood, an 18-year relationship with the NCP, the CP, making sure that the children on the case get support. So the life cycle begins with opening a case and then establishing parentage, establishing the order, and then collecting and distributing support, and when necessary, enforcing or modifying the order. And you see those two arrows at the bottom. These are the places where NCPs can get into trouble most frequently. When the order is established, if the NCP doesn't provide accurate financial information, the order of support may be set too high. The purpose of child support is to ask the NCP, not ask, to make the NCP pay support for the child or children based on who the NCP is at that time. If the NCP is earning a certain amount of money, then the obligation amount that the NCP is obliged to pay is based on those earnings. Enforcing or modifying an order is very important because we know that things change for non-custodial parents. It may be that your hours are cut from your job, or you lose your job, you get injured on your job and go on workers' comp. Those could all be reasons to apply for a downward modification. Similarly, if the NCP gets a promotion, there may be cause for the case to have an upward modification. Again, child support is intended to be right-sized to who the non-custodial parent is at any given point in time. And it's not uncommon during the life cycle of a case to have the child support order amount modified several times. It's also possible the family reconciles, the non-custodial parent moves back in with the custodial parent, and it's possible under those circumstances the support order could be terminated. So there are lots of different ways that things are likely to change during that period of time. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. Next slide. Okay, cases get started through one of two different pathways. Custodial parents who are receiving cash assistance and the children are receiving cash assistance are automatically referred to OCSS. Custodial parents not receiving cash assistance contact our customer services. It's called Family Court Support Services in each branch of family court. So one way or the other, OCSS is going to meet with the custodial parent and complete a child support application and open a case while we go about, if necessary, locating the non-custodial parent. Next slide. The process for the non-custodial parent begins when the non-custodial parent receives a summons to appear for the child support hearing in family court. Now, it's important to note that the child support portion of family court is what's called a pro se court, which means the individual NCP and CP can represent themselves in family court without having to have a lawyer. If the NCP does not appear, then there's going to be a summons served for the NCP to appear, served by the sheriff. The first hearing in family court may result in a child support order, or it may be necessary to return for additional information regarding documentation of what the NCP earns, or maybe there's a question about parentage. Maybe the NCP says, Your Honor, I don't believe I'm the father of this child, in which case the court will order that both parties and the child have DNA testing performed to determine for certain whether or not the alleged non-custodial parent is indeed the father of the child. So after either one visit to family court, or if there's additional material needed, more than one visit to family court, a child support order is issued, and child support will be deducted from the paycheck if the NCP is employed, or else it's expected that it be paid directly by the NCP. But that's the process. And at the moment, because of the pandemic, most of the hearings in family court are being held virtually. And the court is backlogged compared to the way it was prior to the onset of the pandemic in 2020. So it can take a number of months, generally around 5 or 6 months from the time the petition is served. The petition goes to court and the summons is served on the NCP before a hearing is scheduled. So the process is taking a little longer than it used to, and frankly, a little longer than we would like. Next slide. So it's important for the NCP to participate from the very beginning of the process. If the NCP does participate, then the child support order will be accurately aligned with the NCP's income. And there are protections in place for very low income NCPs that are below the federal poverty line. You see that FPL/SSR. FPL is the federal poverty line. SSR is the New York State self-support reserve, which is a higher amount than the federal poverty line. If there are low-income NCPs, there are protections in place. I'm going to show you those in a minute. Above the self-support reserve, the amount the NCP pays is based on a percentage of the NCP's income. So ideally, the NCP pays on time and in full, and that leads to better outcomes for the children. Next slide. So for NCPs that are earning at or below the federal poverty level, and you see down in the lower right corner, every year the levels are indexed. In 2024, for a single person, the federal poverty level is $15,060 or below. This New York State self-support reserve for 2024 is $20,331. So if the NCP is earning at or below the federal poverty level, there are poverty orders that can be $25 per month or even less. There are $0 orders. And there's a $500 cap on arrears owed to DSS. Minimum orders earning at or below the self-support reserve are $50 a month. And above that, the New York State law called the Child Support Standards Act kicks in, and that's when it's a fixed percentage of income. And we'll look at that shortly. Next slide. So, how much child support to expect? If there's one child, the amount of the NCP's income that will be obligated, that he or she will be obligated to pay is 17%, 25% for 2 children, 29% for 3 children, 31% for 4 children, and 5 or more, at least 35%. So if Bill, our imaginary NCP, is making $60,000, the custodial parent, Leah, if there's one child, the child support obligation will equal $10,200 annually. That's 17% of 60,000. 2 children, it's a quarter of the earnings, so that's 15,000. 3 children, 17,400, and so on. So and again, if Bill loses hours and his $60,000 income gets cut to $40,000, then he should hustle into family court and get a downward modification to reflect that change in his circumstances. Next slide. Now, one of the things that's important is to avoid high orders or arrears. So if the NCP doesn't appear at the court hearing, the support magistrate is going to issue a default order. And that is generally set pretty high to encourage the non-custodial parent, who sometimes is the mother. It's not always the father who's the non-custodial parent, but whoever it is, the high amount of a default order is intended to get the non-custodial parent to get into court and to provide the proper documentation as to what the actual earnings are. And the other time that trouble crops up is when circumstances change. Let's take an extreme example. The NCP becomes incarcerated. Now the NCP is earning way below the federal poverty level because you don't get paid very much when you're upstate making snow fence or filing cabinets for correctional industries. That would result in a very low order if we know, but we don't know unless the NCP notifies us. So it's important for the NCP not to ignore child support, but to keep us informed as to the circumstances that the NCP is encountering. Next slide. Okay, Izzy, I think this is where I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chuck. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk a little bit about modifying an existing order. So either party can file a petition in court to modify an order upward or downward. These circumstances include new job or a raise, job loss or decrease in income, incarcerations for orders after October 13, 2010. And I'm sure you probably asked the question, why that date? Well, before that date, it was considered, incarceration was considered voluntary unemployment in which they will continue the order. As of today, we realize that that doesn't make much sense because a person is not making money while being incarcerated. So that's been changed since 2010. Also, sudden disability is part of it, and a change in custody. A petition to modify an order can be filed by the individual without the need of legal representation. OCSS customer service can assist an NCP or CP in filing a petition for a modification. Okay. So how to modify your order? There's several avenues to modify an order. First, you could use general information like the New York State Customer Support, Child Support Helpline. That's Monday through Fridays from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the telephone number is found there. However, they're not as privy to some of the programs we have here in New York City. So something that is important to know is, in fact, that it probably would make more sense to either contact us via email, utilizing the email that you see on the screen. You could also visit 151 West Broadway, 4th floor, New York, New York, 10013. That's from Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Or you could send us traditional mail via the HRA OCSS PO box. Another place you could visit is the New York State Family Court. So there is a link here to Family Court forms, as well as the New York State Family Court Child Support forms. So, and I do see the questions that are coming in. We are collecting them. I do see that there is a Spanish one there, so we are going to address that one as well. So. Also, we have what's called modifying orders through stipulation, what we call MOTS. While the courts were closed because of the pandemic, we worked hard to offer an alternative way for parents to modify existing support orders virtually. MOTS offers parents, CPs, and NCPs the opportunity to work with OCSS customer service representative to discuss and come to an agreement on changing an existing child support order, using the standard Child Support Standard Act guidelines and calculations. The way the process works is OCSS customer service staff speaks by phone to the non-custodial and or the custodial parent to draft an agreement and obtain support documents. The Office of Legal Affairs reviews the signed agreement, documents, and petition. The approved stipulation package is filed in court for a hearing to be scheduled. Typically, it's only one court appearance that's required for an order on consent. Here's the benefits, right? It shortens the time spent in court. It aligns with the NCP's income. It gives the CP and the NCP the opportunity to ask questions in a less formal setting than in the courtroom. It's a more supported process. It allows for open discussions between parents, and it decreases orders made on default. I know there's someone in the chat that was talking about a default order, so this is something that could help out with that. Okay. As far as the agreements go, there are different types of agreements, and we're considering this to be a new path to establish and modifying orders. There's the traditional court process that we mentioned, but now we're utilizing this agreement facilitated through us to help the process move in a more smoother and less hectic way. The traditional court process can take multiple sessions, multiple times to get it right. Here, we're giving the parents an opportunity to really voice their opinions, even though we are still following the same standard acts that they would in the court system. All right. Now it comes to the part that we're going to talk a little bit about enforcement actions. So one thing that's important to note about enforcement actions is that most enforcement actions are done through an automated system. Those are what we call administrative actions. And administrative actions start automatically when certain conditions are being met. The NCPs are notified by mail before a final action is taken and can always challenge the accuracy of the information. When administrative actions are unsuccessful, the court is the only alternative in which judicial actions may be initiated. A violation petition can be filed against the NCP. It's important to note that enforcement actions begin automatically. The best thing to do if this happens is to respond to the notification you received in the mail. Contact OCSS customer services, and we will do our best to help you in the circumstances. What happens a lot is people receive the notice and they ignore it, and then the action takes place, and then they ask questions why the action took place. The reality of it is that if you took advantage of the notice, you probably could have taken a step ahead of it. Unfortunately, it happens. All right. As far as the different types of administrative enforcement actions, we do have quite a few. We have what's called income withholding and medical execution. Now, notice these two actions are very different from the rest because these are court order actions. These actions, they don't serve as traditional enforcement actions. In fact, these are actions to help benefit all the parties involved. So it is wage garnishment from a person's wages, as well as medical support if it's required from the courts. Now, the courts are required to mention medical in the process of child support, so medical is also part of that. Now, the more traditional enforcement actions that we see here are the ones that you see on the screen right now, like credit reporting, seizing liquid assets and bank accounts. Now, that's the only action that we will not notify you ahead of time. The reason why we won't notify you ahead of time is because if we tell you we're going to seize your bank account, then you will most likely remove that money and the action will not really have an effect. So that is something that's important to note. Then there's also driver's license suspension. And this is a very popular one in the sense that most people ignore our notice. However, when they get the suspension, it becomes more challenging to challenge the suspension once it's in action. However, there are methods in place. Lynette, to your question on medical execution, it's very simple. If the NCP is required to provide medical support, through their employer, then they will sign the child or children into their health plan according to the terms of the court order, and the employer must comply with that. Okay. Then there's tax refunds and intercepts, New York City professional licenses like an Uber driver, or the ability to sell foods and things like that. There's intercepting lottery prizes, New York State tax and finances, as well as the 9 passports. And the 9 passports are a little different as well, because there are some exceptions to the rule for really all of these, which is important to know that low NCPs are excluded from some of these actions. Our next is, we're going to talk a little bit about debt reduction programs. Now, when it comes to debt reduction programs, we understand and we recognize that debt is general a negative impact to one's mental health, as well as physical, and could cause stress for many families. We have programs that are designed to help NCPs reduce that child support debt. But it's important to note 2 things. One, the amount of debt that is owed is extremely high. We're going to take a look at it really in the next slide. But the other thing that's important to note is that it's who's the debt owed to. And the debt can be owed to DSS, Department of Social Services. This is where a child is receiving cash benefits from the state and the city, or the money could be owed to the CP by way of a traditional child support, where the money is being sent directly to the CP. We do have programs in place to help money owed to DSS, and these are different types of programs you see on the screen, which will go into it. However, if the money is owed to the CP, we are not in control of whether or not that CP can either lower the amount or forgive it. But we do offer mediation services to help soothe the situation a bit. Now, I mentioned a little bit about the different types of debt, as I showed you before. Only 24% of the cases we have are the debts owed to the Department of Social Services, while the remaining 76%, that's 3/4 worth of debt that's owed, is owed to the custodial parent, which as of late, the numbers, as you can see here, is $2.6 billion that are owed to the CP. So mediation services is extremely important. Now, these are figures that date back to February of 2021. However, the numbers have not changed since. Right. So let's go ahead and take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about these programs that we have in place when money is owed to the Department of Social Services. Right. The first one we have is called the Arrears Cap Program. And what's great about the Arrears Cap Program is that it gives us a limit to how much money can be capped as far as arrears go. And that limit is $500. And this is if the NCP earns at or below the federal poverty level. So the eligibility is that the debt must be permanently owed to DSS. The debt accrued while 1, the child was on the order receiving cash assistance, and 2, the NCP's income was at or below the federal poverty level. The next one is the Arrears Credit Program. The Arrears Credit Program is a $5,000 annual credit when child support is paid regularly for a full year. The NCP can participate for up to 3 years, receiving $15,000 in arrears credit, up to $15,000 in arrears credit. I just want to keep that in mind. Again, like the previous program, debt must be permanently owed to DSS. Current child support orders are fully paid each month for 1 year to either DSS or the CP. And if there's no current order, the amount on the last child support order is fully paid each month for 1 year. Payments go towards the debt that is owed. So that is a very useful tool for us. We've been able to forgive arrears to many NCPs, and you'll see that in the numbers that we'll show soon. Then there's a program that is an annual program that we do. It's called Paid Off. It just finished back in March, but it's important to note that when it does happen again, it's going to run the same process. And Paid Off is a DSS arrears payment matching program that we offer during this limited time. The best thing about the pay it off program is you are able to have your payment being matched dollar for dollar, starting with a certain dollar amount. So this past year, if you paid $500, then OCSS will match it for another $500 and so forth. So one thing is that the debt must be owed to DSS, and it's a minimum payment amount is being made. Okay. Then there's the Parent Success Program, which is designed to support NCP's well-being and strengthen their abilities to provide for their children. In the first phase, up to $10,000 in debt can be eliminated after completing the substance use treatment program. Again, to be eligible, this money must be owed to DSS, and you must complete an approved substance use treatment program. Okay. Reducing debt for families works. We offer these programs because everyone wins. The NCP gets a debt reduction, and two, the CP often sees increase in payments from the NCP. And you can see that we had tremendous outcomes, successful outcomes as a result of utilizing these programs. Now, I did mention when money is owed to the CP, we don't have any programs in place for that because, quite frankly, the money is owed to the CP. But what we do offer is services like mediation services that could address child support debt that's owed to custodial parents. This is where they meet with a mediator to discuss ways on how they could help with it. So they could come up with different types of agreements on past due child support payments, future child support payments. There could be discussions on custody and visitation and communication or other types of conflicts. The idea here and what we really want to be able to assist is we want to be able to assist with the ability of helping the children. For us, it's about the children more than anything else. And we know that there are NCPs that have high arrears that, to be quite frank, will never get paid off because they'll never be able to reach that marker, or they're paying the interest on child support, which can be alarming for high orders. So the idea behind mediation service is to provide a way forward for those hard conversations to take place with that impartial mediator. Okay. Facilitators are trained to listen, to be fair, and to keep the discussion safe and productive. There are free or low-cost options available through OCSS, and agreements can also include in-kind support. For example, the non-custodial parent is a house painter and decides that they could paint the house to reduce some of the debt. So these are different ways, like other alternatives to take care of it. Then we have what's called employment and job training programs. These are job placement programs that exist. You can learn more by the website that you see on the slide there. Also, when we send out this presentation, all these links will have hyperlinks if you receive it through PDF. There's different types of job placement programs. We mentioned parent support program. There's pathways to industrial and construction careers, also known as PINC. Text to Work, Workforce One, and Jobs Plus. And these are all employment and job training programs to help assist parents in their child support program. With that said, I'm going to pass it back to Chuck, who is going to continue and talking and wrapping up the presentation so we could get into the questions and answers. So Chuck, back to you.
Thanks, Izzy. Now, an important resource for both CPs and NCPs is a nonprofit called Family Legal Care. They have a helpline that gives family law information, and that can be done by phone, live chat, or email. They can provide legal consultations in certain circumstances, not so much about child support, but in cases where a child may be taken from the family, that kind of thing. They also have tech hubs that provide computers and internet connections for any CP or NCP who does not have those services themselves. So if you need to file papers in court or respond, you can do that yourself using forms that are available on the internet. And if you need assistance or if you need the ability to connect with with the internet, you can get that through Family Legal Care. Very important resource. You can reach them either at familylegalcare.org or at the phone number shown on the screen. And just a reminder, we are going to be sharing this presentation with all of you. We'll send it out later this week. Hopefully tomorrow, it might be Thursday. We've got kind of a busy week ahead of us. Next slide, Izzy. Now, one great tool that's become very popular with our clients, both CPs and NCPs, is the Access HRA Child Support mobile app. This allows custodial parents to apply for child support and submit forms and affidavits. NCPs can make an online payment with no fee, not only with credit cards, but also with services such as Venmo. The app can also provide notices and appointment reminders. So you can get it by going to nyc.gov/child support mobile, or you can use your smartphone to pull it out, to grab it right from that QR code that's on the screen. Next slide. So the mobile app, as I said, allows non-custodial parents to challenge certain enforcement actions, such as driver license suspension or professional license suspension, interception, tax refund, freezing of bank accounts. You can also question the ad amount, passport denial, or enter into a payment agreement. Next slide. So we're here to help. Our customer services people, and I saw a question just go by asking how to get questions answered. Customer services can answer all kinds of questions, help you apply for child support, explain payments and obligations, help prepare to modify an order, change an address. We need to know your address so we can stay in touch with you. They can give you assistance on enforcement measures. We can go over the debt reduction programs and see if you qualify for those, steer you toward our employment programs. There are the customer service center is in Lower Manhattan, but you can also get basic assistance at any of our other offices. And we can also help with the acknowledgement of parentage, which is one way to establish paternity. Next slide. So these are resources, and when you get this presentation, you'll be able to click on these. On the top left is the New York City child support website, and on the right is the New York State child support website. Now, I want to make a point here, which is that child support is federally mandated, state supervised, and locally administered. So, for example, the jobs programs and the debt reduction programs that Izzy told you about a few minutes ago, those are New York City programs. They do not apply if your case is in another state or outside the 5 counties, the 5 boroughs that comprise New York City. If your case is in Long Island or Rockland County, these programs do not apply. That means that your best resource, from my vantage point, is the NYC HRA OCSS website. We have a bunch of videos, a playlist on YouTube, including a very important video you see on the second row, top on the right side, how to request a phone appointment with OCSS. That's where we're going to suggest a lot of you go, and you do it by contacting us via email. You see down below OCSS customer services. that long email address, dcse.cseweb@dfa.state.ny.us. That goes directly to our customer service unit. And if you email them and put in the subject line, request phone appointment, they will get back to you and schedule a time where you can ask your questions of one of our trained customer service people over the telephone. You don't even have to come into the office. The New York State Child Support 888 number, that's good for basic information. If you don't know how much debt you have in your case and whether the debt is owed to DSS or to the custodial parent, they can tell you that information once they verify your identity. But the programs that we offer are best discussed with New York City OCSS customer services. Next slide. All right, we're coming to the end of today's presentation. So thank you very much.